Now being recorded.
Whenever you're ready. Ingrid.
So, I'm a new faculty member, and when I came to Syracuse, or when I talked to Jeff, how did this come up?
Yeah,
early before I got here.
I was talking about technology.
Right, this summer.
And then you brought up the fact that you use, and we were like, oh my gosh, this would be great if you could talk about it.
But even before I was a member is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Like, even before I got here, I taught at Rutgers, and so that's actually the premise of my first slide. I knew that there was some interest in what I had done there and why I had done it and things like that. And so Jeff's interest, I just need to contextualize for you all because it's based on a use of a tool in a particular way, right, in the way that I've chosen to use it. And as you'll see when we get to the point where I show you sort of the back-end view, the instructor view, I've used this tool for maybe 3 or 4 years. But in those intervening years, it's actually developed, in fact, really quite recently, a set of new functionalities. So I'm not actually really extremely well equipped to tell you about every functionality, right? And I also have a particular perspective that's based on sort of the way that I teach, right? Which was in really big classrooms of undergrads, right? So maybe not hundreds of people, but my classes were between 40 and 60 every semester. And so while I am, because we have to, I did the PDF.
Yep.
Stopping.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Give me a time. While I am that professor, I have many times stood on the desk, especially when people aren't paying attention. There's one thing that I really noticed, and that I'm absolutely. The chairs sometimes move underneath you, but I'm into that kind of theatrics. I don't know why. I don't know who I am when I teach, but I'm that kind of person, which is to say there's no lack of discussion in my classes, right? So the point is not to augment discussion in the classroom. I will look at you, I will come to you, and I will say, Peggy, what do you think about this? You know, I think it's fantastic. I will do this. I'll say, Peggy, why do you think that? Because you're such an awesome teacher. But why do you think, what's awesome? You're so interactive and you make me feel very welcome. Thank you. Some students wouldn't necessarily feel welcome, which is the one reason why I really think, for my process, I feel comfortable with it. People like Peggy feel comfortable with it. But everyone isn't always so able to talk really fast. I'm kind of a fast talker. You know, I'm an engaging person. And so I've kind of been reflecting on my own process. I was just aware of that, and so why I kind of titled it or was thinking about it like that is just giving people either a second chance to think about something, to sort of, it's not always a redo or anything like that, but just in the safety of their own home or, you know, their own time to just give me back something, right? So, is that a good piece? And then I came to, so that was the motivation, I guess, at Rutgers, was really sort of saying I wanted to have another layer to my teaching that was auditory. I believe in being able to talk, right? And so it wasn't a test. I don't grade them well. I give you points, almost like participation points. So again, my process is not to grade you on how well you're presenting necessarily, but to kind of provide a space. So like the first class I ever taught, which was the NYU Polytechnic, when I come here, the issues are different. They're a little bit more around facility with the language, let's say, as opposed to being a nerdy or not so nerdy New Jersey kid, right? You know, so it's another kind of way that I'm augmenting that same kind of providing a platform for reflective thought, thinking again, just, you know, sort of a different motivation with the same sort of venue, if you want to think about it. So this tool called FlipGrid is what I want to talk about today. Oh,
yeah.
What happened?
Oh, I meant to tell you that. For some reason, that didn't come through, whatever that was.
Oh, but there's all screenshots, so, oh, well.
Yeah.
Maybe that was
most of them did. That's the only one that didn't come through.
That's okay. This is fine.
Sorry.
Nope, it's all good. I know what it was. It's just another view of the same tool. So essentially, this is a tool I learned about from one of my colleagues at Rutgers in the LIS program. And so within, possibly in terms of LIS, they were using this tool all along. It was news to me, and so I kind of appropriated it. But as you can see from its sort of tagline, it's really not being sort of pushed out into the pedagogical community necessarily the way that I'm using it. And I'm not saying I'm using it wrong or you should use it this way, but I want to just sort of note that I think that the way that it's being developed is around, sort of flipped classrooms, maybe a little bit inciting discussion. So that's cool, that's good. I haven't been in that situation necessarily. I haven't organized things that way. It's also, the last time I gave the talk was, there were really a lot of people that picked up on the potential for using it in online classrooms. And so I have been in that situation, and I have used it, where discussion is impossible because you're not in the same room. And so there are affordances for this tool that I guess I'm underusing. I'm not going to apologize for it so much as to sort of let you know that there are a lot more things to do than I do. So essentially, when I gave the talk before, I probably didn't go enough into the detail. A lot of people were very interested in it. So good. What is that anyway? Saw that.
Table like
There's another one back there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No problem. So just in the sort of service of getting you on the same page that I'm on without sort of extemporating why I'm using it anymore, I just want to walk through a little bit about the way the tool is sort of set up. And then I have 3 videos I just picked out somewhat arbitrarily that kind of show the way that I'm using it. And then maybe we can just have time for questions. So very casual. If you have a question at any point, just interrupt me. I can sit down and we can video together. You look perplexed. Are you perplexed? Are you perplexed? Do you have a question?
No.
You're good? Am I talking kind of fast? Everything good? Okay, excellent. So I'm going to keep going. That's also just to show you how you can get that FlipGrid.com. So this is a view. This is a screenshot of the view that I see when I log in. When I remember my password, more importantly, when I remember my email address to the sort of the back end, not what the students see. And you can just see these are all the classes I've taught in the past. This is the one I'm teaching right now. So a lot of examples are going to drop just from this one because I'm active. So you can see in kind of the screen I can toggle something active or off. So I could kind of reignite all those ones from knowledge management class in 2014. Don't need to do that necessarily to show you the video, but that's what the students see. So I can kind of easily turn it off, let's say if I need to. But this, I'm a kind of time-oriented person, so I've just organized it by time, but note that each one of these is called a grid. That's my nickname, so that's a great thing. But I have 9 grids. I think in the sort of service, whatever kind of account that I had at Rutgers is going to expire somewhat soon. I was allowed to have a certain number of those grids. So I think if your institution gets that, or however you subscribe, I kind of tuck them into allowing me 10 grids. Because this is actually a tool that's born from sort of the Learning Sciences Department, University of Minnesota. So I've been interviewed by them. They're very interested in making this a stronger, more robust tool. And so maybe they had a soft spot for me. In any case, I'm kind of showing you the entire archive of what I've done. I'm not sure that everyone could do that. I'm not sure you'd want to do that necessarily. But this is my active one. You can have a certain number of grids, but then within a grid you have topics, and I'll show you those a little bit. And so you can have any number of topics. You're limited in terms of grids, but not topics. Is there any more questions about?
So Ingrid, is there a free version to this? Do you know?
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure anymore. There used to be.
Used to be.
Yeah. I haven't really checked up on it because I haven't needed to. I've just been under account for like 5 years.
Okay.
I think there is. It's a good question. I'm sorry.
Quick question on the screenshot. It says responses and total time.
Right. So good question. So let me just get to one more.
Okay, got it.
So you'll see what that means. Right. And again, to me, that matters less. Okay. No, let me go back. So that's just an accumulation of everything that's in here, right? So in your grid, I'm not sure that I extracted it in detail. So I have in this class, for instance, which we're going to see a little bit more detail. Can I touch that? Is that
You
okay?
can touch it, but it won't do anything.
No, but I'm not getting.
No, you can touch it.
So I have 12 different topics. There are like 12 different prompts, if you want to think about it like that. I have in the past organized that per week, right?
So it's kind of like having a forum in a discussion board.
Sort of.
You have like 12 forums.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't do discussion boards a lot.
Oh.
But I think, so I would say yes, I think, right?
That helps me think about it.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Yes, I think it's forums. Yeah,
Forums,
absolutely.
yeah.
Right, so it's the kind of high-level thing upon which there's something else going on, except in a sort of threaded discussion. This, in in the way I set it up isn't necessarily meant to be threaded. Though, in the last year, it can be. It didn't used to be able to be that, right? So it wasn't trying to emulate kind of a video-based threaded discussion. It was merely sort of like, you know, the ability to make a little video easily uploadable. I think there was this kind of like, yeah, I could upload it to YouTube, but that's very awkward. And so it kind of was almost providing a forum or platform for easily sharing videos. Like it just really, it used to be 1.5 minutes only.
Oh.
They've made it up to 3. So this is not just an open-ended thing, I should mention that. Right, so kind of the easy way of just aggregating that upward, and now there's the threaded part because you can reply.
Gotcha.
That is very new. So this shows that 12 topics, and that within those 12, like if we divided them, we haven't done all the 12. So far, of my 11 students, there's been 92 responses to my prompts, if you will, that are at the moment totaling 2 hours worth of video. So that might mean something in a really big classroom, or I'm really looking at those videos in a way that they are the product. Like I don't make them do, you know, 2-minute video or 3-minute video. They merely have to do replies, right? So I'm fastened with the total time, but that's what that means. Like this one, for instance, I had 12 topics. I had 65 students, right? So there's a lot more replies, and there's a lot more time. So that's really, it's just kind of giving you a shot of almost the number of people in your class and how long they're, you could divide it off. So I will actually go at the very end. There's these 2 spots, the dashboard and the connection. And the dashboard is the kind of initial analytics view, something I've never used, but they didn't have that when I started using it. So I'm a little bit of a bad narrator in this case, because I'm not actually, I've just gotten a bit into habits, and I think, like actually I think prompting to do these talks has made me realize a lot more what I could do with it, so that's kind of good.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, so you said there's not a limit to the topic.
There isn't a limit to there's a limit to the number of grids you can have, which is like
right.
the class level, but not the topics underneath.
And there's not a limit to the number of students that can answer the topic.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that there's a share option to the right of active.
New. Also new.
That's new as well. So I'm wondering what that actually shares.
This is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to have that live. We can play with it. Well, when we get to the end.
No, well, wait. Yeah, let's do that because I'd be curious. I'm wondering if it gives you like a video portfolio, if you will.
I think it's either a downloadable thing, you know, the way you showed me how you could download all your assignments and blah.
Right.
I think it's like that, but I'm not positive of that. That'd be a pretty big file, right? So it may be analytics.
Oh, and I'm wondering if it's allowing you to take it out of FlipGrid and put it into something else,
That's
like
also
Blackboard.
getting to be more, like they're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
You might want a different speaker to correct all the names. So anyway, good questions. Keep them up.
Yeah.
So this is what that sort of when you get into one of those grids, this is the active one. This is what I see, right? So I just want to sort of say I give them. So I'm getting in kind of view this view. They know it as this, right? My students know it as FlipGrid.com. You know, Syracuse Information Management 611 Spring 17. I made up that code, right? Which is password protected. So we made up, and that's in my syllabus, right? So they know they're trusted that it doesn't have to be password protected, but that's how they get to it. They have to enter their password, then they can upload. And I'll show you what their view looks like. But just so that you can see that you have that orientation, and I have the ability to make it active, and then I just, for conversation.
So Ingrid, one more question.
Yeah.
Students, this is free for them.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. So anyway, just because I knew you would ask, I toggled down like what you could do in that edit grid. So share grid, you know, we don't know what that means, but I want you to see that you can do it. But again, the new feature, you could duplicate this whole thing, right? Let's say I teach this class again.
Right.
I never usually do this, but you know, you can just use this whole same thing over again. Like with shells, I used to call it in some world that I lived in. I don't remember what that was. Or I can get rid of it or something like that. So, so it's getting to be a little more like tools like Blackboard and tools that we may answering it. So these are the topics, those 12 topics, inside my grid for information management this semester. And I just took a screenshot, so I organized them by time. I'm a time person. So you can kind of see these are upcoming. They haven't been done. Nobody's replied to them yet. Some people, these three, I'm going to show you these. These are group ones. So I have, at the sort of second half of my semester, I've had a kind of day that's a reading-oriented day, and we have an in-class discussion, and then the complementary week, the week later, is a kind of project-based task around the reading, and they go off and they have to do something, and they have to report back to me on FlipGrid as a group, right? So I don't know, they stray, like, so there's 3 of them in the view and all this kind of stuff. So that came from undergrads more than, these are pretty responsible graduate students. So anyway, that's why you only see 3. You can see some people reply more than once. Like if they have something more than 3 minutes to say, there's nothing that will stop them from doing multiple ones or correcting something or adding something. Some people are not doing it because I only have 10. Interesting. I just kept this on because after we came back from break, there was some question about what it's doing. But so that means that it's, in their view, that gets pushed to the top. You can kind of pin it to get pushed to the top. And each one of these you could share, like if I didn't want to have them have access to everything, I could sort of share each prompt with this code in that URL. So I could sort of control access completely. I don't really, the whole point for me is that they see one another's videos, so that's harder to do in that view. So that's just kind of pure learning motif that I have. Again, you can share at the individual level, which I think is more like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then the actions have to do with kind of editing or deleting, kind of similar to the other ones. Questions? So I think.
Is this what students see too?
No, this is my.
No.
Yeah,
okay.
that's coming up in a sec. But just so you see, this is how this is an individual one, right? So I'm kind of drilling down. So that's what they see. So this is like my prompt, right? Very banal, actually. This is a particular, like, essentially I want them to make, my point is like it gives you a chance to sort of reflect on something. Again, it's not a test kind of question. It's like, you know, Jeff, what was the most important thing that you think we talked about today? And that's interesting to me to hear back because you don't know what I want. That's the whole point. So I can freeze it. This is also a new function so that you can view it but you can't record it, which is like nice, you know. This is the sort of same thing, you can pin it. I tend to put in time. I've actually changed that time. So this is sort of gives people work shifts and they don't come home until 3 o'clock in the morning. So I've changed that and updated that to 3 o'clock. So that was information that was good for me. So again, I'm going just drilling down. I think the next one that's starting to do is students. No, so this is the reply that I see to that particular thread, right? Like this, you can pin those if I wanted to share a particular one and say, in this one, look at Kirsty's or look at Ronald's or something like that. This shows that or let's say if I had a TA, has viewed it. That if that's not darkened, it's sort of yet to be graded, if you will, in the grade center. This is actually, for me, really important. I actually complained about this because at one point they only had the date and not the time. And I was like, look, this is super important for me. And so, I don't know if I had any influence there, but for instance, like some of these are actually past the deadline. And so, to me, they're, later, brings up the question, blah, 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 blah. This is, to me, a super important point. Like, so likes, you can do that, new functionality. Replies, you can do that new functionality. I've only done that on one so far, but this shows me that someone else is looking at it, right? That's what I care about. It's not me, because I'm usually looking at it once. But, a lot of times you can see that these get the most and then they go down because people are looking at what other people have said. There was a really interesting instance last week in class where, so there's these groups and there's these individual ones, and one of the students had her dog got into the video, right? And she actually used that then to kind of extemporize in her answer, right? And then a couple people were like, how's your dog? And I hadn't graded those yet, so I was like, what are we talking about? But everyone else had seen it, right? So that was really good. So I think there's this kind of bit of social glue that really matters to me. Like there's the professional kind of student presentation of self that you have in the classroom, trying to teach the professor who you are and what your sort of ambitions are. And then there's this kind of creeping in sociality, not sort of not taking it seriously, but that to me is really, really important. So you start to see stuff like that, like it gives a venue for that. So okay, so this is me just kind of going down. This is one of those replies in that thread that I've shown you, just to show you what I see. Again, I can pin it, I can export it. We can look at this one later if you want. It shows me how long. There's 3 minutes possible. It shows me how long. I can, make it bigger. I can just toggle it as a video, right? So there's also ability now. I haven't shown you this view to get a real-time transcript, which I think is sort of interesting for English language learners. It's not perfect. And then also to provide feedback. And I've never asked anyone to provide feedback, and I don't really almost want to look at that because it's not anything I've ever done. But note that those are new functionalities. If this is a presentation where you're really providing feedback, or if I wanted to be probably a better professor, I would say this is awesome, made me think of it, kind of grading rubric. I usually talk about them in class, so it's my way of providing feedback. But again, 24 views, really good. We'll have a chance to look at these a little more closely if you want to play with any of the views.
Yes, that transcript is built in.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in that.
One of these coming up where I show that. So again, like what I can do, I can share it, I can download it, I can move it, duplicate it.
So Ingrid, how much are you paying for this, if you don't mind me asking?
I have no idea because I've never paid for it. Like it's a Rutgers license. My sense is that as an individual, I think at one point I paid as an individual, like before we all decided we wanted to do it as a collective, right? It was maybe $50 a year.
$50?
Yeah, right. She came to my presentation last time. And she has a whole completely different way of using it, which is good, right? She has a team like that, right? And so she has these virtual teams that, sort of create a whole in a kind of topic, in an area, like they're in charge of something. And so all their little parts go into making a whole. And it's like their final presentation, almost. So again, not to apologize, but it's not the way I've used it at all. So it's very different. But this kind of assessment stuff is literally very new. It's, and I think I would start, that's the part I would start to look a little more closely at my own teaching practice, is that what do I really want them to do with these and how should I assess them? Because it's been a little bit augmentative so far. Like, they're usually great, right? I'm not critiquing them. I'm just giving them the platform. And I think I could make it, not harder necessarily, but I could make it a little less. For me, it has a social function almost more than a pedagogical, right? It develops ties amongst the students, and it lets them learn from one another. And so if they don't do it, that's the biggest thing. Whatever they're doing, for the most part, is welcome, right? But anyway, to your point, there's more stuff. So this is, again, just the individual view, so I was just showing you. So this is the view that the student gets, right? So this, it's got that same prompt, all the things that you saw. It gives them a sense of how many times, it gives them a sense of their whole as a class. They can click this to add a response. They see all the other people that have added. They can reply in video. Again, that's a new feature. But again, to the point I was just talking about, the sort of social part, these are these stills that are not part of the video. So it's really interesting to sort of see how people, it's very interesting, like this is the kind of stuff I like to study, right? To sort of see like these things that, the ways that people present themselves. I think particularly in these online classes, it's that little ability to kind of be something different than you're expected to be. I love that, right? So Kirti is, increasingly not there, but she has other things. So that's their view. And so it's organized in this way by, they can choose to look at it however they want, who posted first, last. But they can look at it by name. You have to enter just your name. You can just say Romo or something. How many people have liked it? Again, that's a new feature, so I haven't really asked them to do that kind of work. But you can look at it, just the way a lot of social media things would work, how many people have viewed it, stuff like that. So there's a lot of potential here for your next speaker to correct. So again, if you wanted to do a reply to that specific video, that's what the interface looks like. You can, like it, you can see how many views, or you can add your own reply. So this is just another view. Again, you guys have like something going on between that. I just wanted to point this one out in particular because this one is pretty often seen. The class, again, I was one of these case-oriented class kind of around, it was around kind of information-seeking behaviors a little bit and how it could have been better. So all of them had to move to Syracuse without any information about where they would live. So the task was, how could you improve that task, right? Or how could you change that task, or what kind of. So in the end, they actually helped the women figure out a new place to live. It was not part of the assignment at all, so that was her way of saying thank you for that thing. So again, kind of in class, out class, kind of it starts to build those bridges. Again, this is the one sort of view only because there was one assignment where I asked them to actually pose a question at the end of their musing, and that they had to answer a question as part of this, right? So this is just the view of people answering this person's question. That's what it looks like. But it creates this loop, so you can, of course, listen to those, and you could comment on those. There's potential. So this is a view of the real time, but you can see, like, you can listen to it. It's not there's no punctuation. It's an Indian accent. So it's not bad, but not great.
Right.
It might create a little more problems than it helps. And then just two last things I wanted to say. I already mentioned this. It's just both I like the pictures, but that I use this in a way to sort of make them responsible for being. They have agency to do whatever they want, where they want to go, but they have to kind of create this within a certain time before class is over with. They have to post this, and everyone has to be in the video, right? So this is just a kind of a tweak of mine, not in any way intended by the developers of this tool, but it works pretty well, and I have a version of that I'd like to show. And then the last is just two views on, I think this is just a drill down on that, one of those. This is a view of the dashboard, which is, so this again is all of them. Remember you were asking about time, and this is like everything in my total, FlipGrid task. So I had 9 grids in task all together, post 69 topics. To me, that's not really, that's not meaningful to me. It might be very meaningful to someone else. But this just, you can toggle per class, and you can change the time frame, to see like where the activity is. And then it just gives you the most recent responses. So far, I think that's okay, but I'm sure there are much more sophisticated analytics that people would want, or that I've seen in learning management systems. This is maybe trying to approximate some of them. Last slide is just that this is an interesting new thing that has really never been around before, but is trying to kind of make connections between classrooms. So I think it's used a lot in elementary schools and junior highs and high schools and stuff like that. So where around certain themes, for instance, like I noticed Earth, I didn't explore these too much, but World Water Day, if you're doing a unit on World Water Day, you can connect with other students in other classrooms. So again, not necessarily part of the way that I use the tool, but an interesting, interesting way of thinking about kind of this cache of video here and kind of how you can be more interactive. I think really that idea of exciting discussion pushes me into directions where I want to do that a little bit more, but where it shows me where I haven't. But I've been satisfied with my use. But I wouldn't teach a class without this. I feel like I've used it for something. Or, until I get to a point where it's not. So this is all I have. I also have, so this is where Jeff, I don't know if you want to take over or what you want to do, but I have just 3 to show you the experience of it.
I just want to capture that in the recording.
Yeah. It's really warm. Good. Okay, so this is These are merely randomly picked, but just to give you a sense of how this is live now, so we can go back and look at anything. Do you want to look at anything first before I do this, like the share function?
No, do what you're doing, and then we'll go at the end.
Okay. So this is just, remember I said Kirsty, she's been doing interesting things, so like admin, all the way along. She's
very creative.
She's very creative.
Yeah,
she's
I like
pretty
that.
awesome. I'm going to sit for this, just so that it'll control better. But, so this is actually a fairly recent, like 2 weeks ago, assignment where we talked about, well, we're talking about information management uncertainty. But so I didn't ask what the prompt, the prompt is, I don't have the prompt. Can I see the prompt? There. It's very banal, right? Like flow sharing, one thing that you learned. But what I want them to think about is, what did they learn? What resonates with them? Like I'm not asking for something specific on purpose, right? But what I really like is what you get from people anyway.
Oh, and I see you do it change now to 3 a.m.
Yeah, see?
Yeah.
I'm learning. I pay attention. Okay, so just to give you something, we don't have to listen to the whole thing, but.
Hello. Today's class will discuss predictive analysis and its algorithms. Our discussions majorly centered on morality and the assumptions that are involved in making up the algorithm. And the most impressive part to me was how much of predictive analysis we are using even today, especially when it's so imperfect. We got to know that an algorithm can be as opinionated as its creator. So, if the mother wants nutrition, a good meal would be one which has high nutrition. If the kids want ice cream, a good meal would be the one which has more of ice cream. Same situation but different views. Then how do we let so much of predictive algorithm decide what we do today? And
I'm just going to cut it off there. So let's see what this says. These are also new, right? This tool has really changed a lot in the last 6 months. So I think that those are auto tags from what she's saying.
What it looks like.
But some of which are more dubious than others, like good native. I'm not sure what that means. That's why I think they're auto tags.
Ice cream.
Ice cream, I believe. That was actually, but you know, some of them are sort of interesting to play with. So that makes it bigger. What does this do?
This looks like volume.
Yeah, but this is volume. Oh no, that's volume. You're right, totally. And then, so let's see what this does.
Yeah, that's
so it's
download.
just download. I just did it twice. So it just, it's a file. So I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Oh,
So
MP4. Okay.
yeah. So that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
And again, I did this because I wanted to show it to you today. But let's see what this is. Like the replies. Okay, there is an Excel file.
Ah.
So, but there are no replies. So, but that's interesting because that's just kind of the metadata of the whole thing, right?
So can you scroll up?
Yeah, exactly. Well, just feedback. So this is what you would see if you do the feedback. So for me, I'm just not doing these things.
Oh,
I think I might do that in the future.
Yeah.
So if only this part, like the performance, that's not a criterion that matters.
Oh, and you can send it to them in
But
an email.
ideas, yeah.
Cool.
So this is new and kind of cool. And then this is the sort of translation. And this isn't new too. You can edit it.
Oh.
Right? So that has some features. All right. So that's just one. I'm just picking on these two because there are people I know that wouldn't mind. This is just the way that I have it done as a group. I won't say the whole thing.
Hello everyone, our group's name is Strategy, and we have been given a topic to talk from the freelancer's point of view. The way we are approaching this is that freelancers are exposed to an organization in different levels. Probably they're exposed to high level of
We should determine who's going to take the risk in case.
procedures in place by the organization.
Like what's important.
And as mentioned before,
So not giving them the benefit of listening to their content, which is quite interesting. But again, auto tag, active, shows me that they did it on test. This is my class under 12 15. I can do it before 12 15. I can ask them, all the same sort of versions, it's just a group version. And then this one, each one says next to response code, it has a view as student. Oh, you want to see that? Where is digital learning? Oh, I think under details. Yeah.
Hello everyone. Our group's name is Strategy, and we've given a topic to talk from the freelancer's point of view. The way we are approaching this is that.
And so if we wanted to add a reply, it would, you know, ask.
You can say it out if you want. If you want to do it.
Not necessarily, but I just, I mean, we can say aloud for our future. But, you know, so it just sets you up, right? It gives you, like, what the original assignment was, right? You can tell do audio, gives you this time counting down kind of clock. When it was 1.5, people were like, oh, that's so long. And then they would always run out of time. I can't make it any bigger than that. You know, I can't toggle that. That's a given. I think there must be some way of controlling data. Let's see what this does, right? This is, okay, so that's also new, right? Very cool. Again, you need a second person. All right.
Hello everyone. Our group's name is Strategy.
And this is the last one because this is more just this was after my class at Rutgers ended. And so one of the things that they could do for extra credit, this was an extra credit, was essentially tell me where the class could be better, right? You know, nothing extremely exciting, nothing new. If I look at it, so I had 65 people in the class. I got a lot of really good feedback, you know, about the class, right? So I don't think it was worth more than 2 points. So I'm just saying, like, that, to me, that's amazing data. So they also want to do it, right? Which is, to me, an indicator that I did something right in the class. But this one I thought is just really interesting to me because it really shows her thinking about the prompt. It also shows her relating an assignment that she did to the prompt. And like so she's reflecting on her own specific assignment that she did.
So,
yep.
Can you go back?
Yep. To this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just click on one of those blue arrows on the right-hand
Yeah.
side?
Brilliant. Sharing.
Okay. Share. Oh, see, there's an embed and a QR code. Interesting. You can embed those videos.
So that's just the admin function. This is the share function. Yes. Do you want me to click on any of those?
No. I'm just wondering what they allowed you to do. Cool.
It's a good tool.
Yeah, it is good.
Okay, so well, maybe this is another good one. All right, this actually, I'll show you this one. There's a couple of good ones. All right, there's one that I told you about it, but so this one is very interesting. This one is a very like extremely quiet, extremely studious, quite quiet student in class. She would never not say something if I asked her a question, but this would never be the persona that you would want. But then her reply, I consider this a success because she's doing this in front of all of her peers, and to me, it's a good critique.
So, for what we should have done instead of just speaking about drones and stuff, I actually like learning about drones since I didn't know much about them. But I think we should have focused on, I guess, comparing technology in different places in the world.
Good point.
Like compared to the U.S., we tend to think we're really addicted or really dependent on our devices or just like technology in general. But I feel like there's other countries where they use technology in very different ways, or at least they view it to be very like.
You get the point. You notice this is like when this was just last year. We only had 1.5 minutes. So a lot of stuff happens in January, frankly. So this success of this to me is not what she's saying or how she's saying it. You know, the presentation of it. It's like that signals to me someone who feels safe enough to share that critique to me and to her peers at the end of the class. A very worthy critique. So to me, that's just like a success that I've done well in the classroom, right? That I've created an environment where you could take me to task. One last one, which is just the one that I was mentioning about learning. Again, a pretty studious fierce woman, but a really quiet woman. So this idea of giving a voice, it's slow, it's on your own pace, but you have a platform to do that.
So for the hot topics, I actually think that robots and artificial intelligence should be separated into two different topics. When we were researching for our presentation, we actually found a lot of different issues in both of those, and even though they're pretty related to each other, they're not so related that I think they should be shared.
So to me, the discernment to be able to push back on me to putting those two things together shows that she's learned enough to sort of say, there's a lot of really important and interesting ideas wrapped up in AI that are different than robotics. And I would agree completely. That was a choice to sort of get through more things, right? But that's not anything I asked her to discern, right? It just sort of shows she's gotten that far. This is social informatics class. This is, big ideas class. So like, I love that ability to kind of say, we could do this better, and then doing it better, right? So thus I missed my presentation really, but I'm happy to play with more versions of this, or go back, or look at the, sort of look at the grids, or anything you want, or answer any questions. What do you think?
Go ahead. What do I think?
Yeah.
Well, so the reason I came to this to begin with was that much of my scholarly work is in rhetoric of silence and the pedagogical implications of calling upon people to speak. So I'm very, very sensitive about participation policies and how I ask students to engage and what counts as participation and things of that nature. So
You'd call it sweet.
Probably, truth be told, right? Because I was always the quiet student. And when I knew there was a policy where I was going to get called on, I couldn't even focus on what was going on because I was so focused on, like, what if he or she calls on me? So whatever it was that they were saying, I wasn't even paying attention to it because I was too upset. I was too worried about being called on. So I'm just always kind of thinking, but also I experimented with audio feedback a few years back, and I hated that.
What is that exactly?
So it was just, I don't even remember what program I used, but it was basically my way of, like, because I have so many students, trying to give valuable feedback without writing out, the entire thing, right? So I could quicker,
like giving it back
yes,
to your students.
right. Like I could quicker record 2 minutes
Yeah.
and say a lot.
I got you.
Writing that 2 minutes of material takes a lot of time, right? And I hated the audio feedback because it ended up taking twice as long as if I would have just written the comments. And so I was just really interested in kind of revisiting the issue again, and thinking about it maybe from a video standpoint where it kind of is valuable not only in terms of my values in terms of participation and things of that nature, but I also avoid discussion boards. I hate discussion boards.
They have a function, but they're limited, right?
They're limited, and so I thought, like, I don't know, this seems like a way to kind of like address my issues with discussion boards and participation and the way I give feedback as a teacher, maybe even. So I was interested in a tool that maybe.
One thing that seems interesting to me, just in lieu of your point, and it would be interesting to talk to these people in Minnesota, is it appears to me, and again, this is a new functionality, that you as a teacher and assessor, the person who has the admin credentials, have to write your replies. I don't think that there is anything in that feedback reply.
Yeah.
You can score something, you can write something, but I don't think you can even give audio or video feedback.
So when you give feedback, or when you reply,
I don't ever reply in this tool.
is it always public, I wonder?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Or could you make it a private reply?
Right, that's a good question.
Because then you could do that.
Yeah. So again, I'm not in any way sort of critiquing what you said, but I think I probably should have even set it up. Like, to me, there's like a whole part of the beginning of my class, and I'm the kind of person that doesn't like I don't like seeing authority figure kind of thing. But where there's a kind of I'm kind of a high expectation, hard goal kind of professor, right? So everybody in my class, and this is not like a mandate, but it's like everybody in my class has something to say, and that's the baseline, right? So if you also this kind of license to fumble or license to say, I can't do it right now, but, I'll do it here, right? So I want to kind of spread it. So I have this little, I might not do a little bit more, and every now and then I think, but sometimes actually I'll ask just a question of like, do you think this is like, and this will sound wrong the way I'm saying now, but like, what about this is bullshit, right? I'll ask a question where I just try and totally undo it, right? What about this sounds fake or false? Or something like that, any opinion at all, right? I always say at the beginning of my classes that you can bullshit any answers that you want as long as you do it expertly. That's a skill, right? So these kinds of things are not taking it not seriously so much as they're creating this kind of culture a little bit. So I think for me, I think it's a really fascinating topic, and I'm not sure I completely buy my own pedagogical stance, but I also know that people have a lot to share, and they get away with not sharing it with their peers, and their peers and themselves are at a loss when they can't. So creating some way, I don't know any more than they do, right? I just know how to push this idea.
Right.
So it kind of has worked out somehow, but it's not that there's the right answer thing. It's almost always my classes are these like there is no right answer kind of class. Right. So that I should have said a little bit more why that
I teach writing, so there's no right answer in my classes either.
But you kind of know that your voice is valuable and we want to hear it. But that's not like demand. It's like creating the cultivation to have that happen. So this kind of is what I said I wouldn't have trouble teaching in class because like what I did maybe like I do that a lot. And some people are completely freaked out by that. But they also see that I'm serious. Like I create kind of trying to really create these time and space for you to do it in a way that is comfortable to you. Right. As long as it's on, you have to kind of be up there. So
you're saying the feedback is only written?
Let's check that. So I believe let's just go down to one of them, right? So if I wanted to assess Newton, I would be able to score him, right? And I would be able to leave textual feedback.
It's 1,024 characters, it looks like.
Yep, exactly.
So they're limiting you there.
Much, right? Yeah. And there's no, you can't just reply in a
What is the thing up on the top? The concept.
That's like I can take his whole response and I can download it, or I can duplicate it or delete it. I could possibly like share it. I wonder if I share it, if I could like, somehow I could maybe upload my own video to his video. That's more skill or time than I usually have. But like maybe I could download it and write a, embed it in a. Well, let's ask him to change that.
I think we should.
Absolutely, right? Especially if we have, 3 people right here that think that's a good idea.
Well, it's interesting that it's a video tool.
Right. It does not.
But see, I think it's this kind of I don't want to critique that, but it has a high school assessment modality in this teacher mode, right? And that's a little bit why I haven't paid attention to those things, because I've never really thought about it as an acceptable assignment, right? It's a participation assignment. I might give it, if you're late, I might give you a lower score, or if you have the option to do 3 minutes and you do 30 seconds, I might do it that way, but it's not so much for me the grading of the content of it. Possibly could be in the future now that they're getting more robust. But yeah, so this part I think is
the only way you can reply is to do a public reply.
Should we check that?
Well,
I think
pretend like
I
you're.
don't think so, because I think it goes here, right?
Pretend like you're gonna.
Hey, my own stuff. Save, so it's saved.
But if you view it as a student?
Yeah, view it as a student.
Okay, sent him that.
Yep.
We gotta go back to details, right?
Yeah. And now add a
Hi
reply.
guys. So my opinion as it relates to class and the topic of predictive.
So this is just that I viewed it. That's the transcript.
Add a reply up there.
This is my ability to add a video.
Right.
That
Right.
was that as if I was in a.
It's going to be public and everything.
Exactly.
That was the question.
So you could do a video reply that way, but not
But everybody
put
can
in the
see
for me a little brand new, or once I get into this kind of, I know exactly kind of tested these ideas a little bit more, I could see this being a really interesting place for me to audio, video, comment for the benefit of everyone, just like what I'm talking about, right? So I tend to do that in the class, and this is, like I'm saying, this is kind of the platform for reflection on your own time. But this couldn't, it could be anything, right? I could create that. What do you guys think?
So all the questions you pose, reflective type questions?
Yes. Right. So that's
it's a requirement for everyone to do a posting for every.
It's there are points for it, so you can choose to take those points or not. Yes. Requiring them in the sense that it's part of your grade. But
Well, I just wondered, if students have been open to doing videos every week, but I guess they are.
So in the sense of why wouldn't they be for senior?
But I've had students who are like, oh my gosh, you got to do another YouTube.
That's what I push them on. Yep, they do. But because your voice really matters, right? So I'm not usually in a situation where they don't do it. So I'm not patting myself on the back, but somehow I haven't come into that situation. It counts for points, and they tend to want to do it, right? So
is this in lieu of them talking out loud in your class?
no.
Okay, so they have to do
With
both.
one exception, right, is that sometimes when there's like 60 plus people, everyone doesn't, much as I know all their names, that's why this is a weird situation, because I would usually know all your names.
Yeah.
And I said, yes.
Right.
You would talk if you wanted to talk, or
Right.
if I wanted you to talk, and I wouldn't be that rude.
Right.
But, so, it's not in lieu of that kind of discussion, and there's this, most of the class is discussion-based, right? So, but where it came to be really helpful was in these really big classes where they there wasn't time, or, an hour and 20 minute kind of classes. You couldn't have everyone's opinion. And so, in that sense, it's kind of extracting an opinion on what we talked about.
Right.
Some people repeat maybe what they said, or they, continue that point kind of a little bit further.
The other
It's
thing,
not
though,
usually,
is
in the undergrad, it's not usually every week.
I was going to say, because you got 30 students at 3 minutes apiece, that's a lot of time.
But that's why in the past I haven't done it as a kind of I'm grading you on the content as much as like I'm making sure that you're part of the conversation and everyone else participates.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's not seriously taken by me.
Yeah.
But I haven't looked at it as an assignment maybe where while I would copy edit and give you like extended feedback on written work.
Yeah.
I don't do that at these because they're a little more. Are you playing or not playing? Right? And if you're not playing, I listen to them.
Right.
And I will sort of grade lower for high level issues. Like if they totally didn't, they're babbling.
Right.
Then I would do it. But I'm not checked. There's not a rubric.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So do you think with the responses, the 3-minute responses, that you get enough to that they understand what was covered?
For the math, so for the undergrads, I think their prompts are a little more like, I want them to just have to think of me before they go to bed kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I want them to have to kind of make a thought after they leave the classroom. I'm not actually sure that I care exactly what that thought is relative to what I said, but that it's their own having to re-engage with the issue and sound like they know what they're talking about, right? But in that sense, yeah, they're usually sometimes you notice that they're responding to other people, which is interesting, right? Sometimes they're just sort of reading, well, what you said in class, I don't agree with that, or I think this other thing is really interesting about that. So it's not necessarily regurgitating the stuff as it is what struck you,
Right.
And that part I think they are doing. And I'm not sure that I would know exactly how to assess that anyway in terms of, like, are they engaging at all? It's kind of the thing that I care about more there. But for these math students, which is the first time I ever had them do the 3 minutes, that we've had the opportunity to do 3-minute videos, the situation and why I'm kind of hedging a little bit is the situation has changed where 3 minutes is actually quite a long time. And so if you listen to some of these new students that I have, they really can, in 30 seconds to 45 seconds, show that they know what they're talking about, and then they can extend that into sort of the new direction that I'm asking about, right? So a bunch of them, I would say the thing that I'm not in love with, but I haven't necessarily eschewed, is they sometimes stick too much to kind of woo at this, and we talked about this. they summarize it.
Yeah.
And I'm always putting them past that. And I think that's a little bit of unlearning stuff that they've tried to really be skillful at and have needed to be skillful at in the past. And so I'm a little bit weird in what I'm asking them to do, like having this but they're getting it, right? Because I actually, this is not parallel, but in the beginning of the class, I do a lot of kind of theory, big ideas, and then the second half of the class is kind of building, making, discussing, engaging kind of stuff. And so they write a lot in the beginning, sort of relatedly, and there's a lot of these reflection prompts there. And so they're kind of, by this time, they're getting what I'm trying to talk about. In the beginning, they don't really know what that means, and so we have to go over that a little bit. But like you could see the stuff that this woman Tracy was talking about is like, I'm surprised that this is as expensive as it is, and she then goes on to talk about a video that we saw, kind of what that means, and that, well, it's not all about value, it has this thing, and that we need more auditors, we need algorithmic auditors, which is absolutely what taught in class, but the way she kind of got there through her own thinking and her own augmentation of that. That 3 minutes is a pretty good amount of time to do that. More than that, I think that you'd have to kind of move in a new direction. So I think this is a kind of nice, it's that much better than 1.5.
Right, so this is 614, this is the gateway class. Am I correct?
621.
621, sorry. 621, the gateway
You may know
class.
better than I do. I think so. Yeah.
Right, so this is first timers. A lot of these are.
These are actually mostly brand new people.
Yeah.
Like as of January, right? But I also know, because I have to have a meeting about this, that that I'm only one of many teachers of this class. So right now I'm doing something over here, probably all other people. So that we're working on it. A little more aligned. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm in that kind of bigger, sort of social semantic, socio-technical systems approach, and so a lot of it for me is like, I think 614 is what Steve Sawyer teaches, right?
614 is the business management.
So he teaches. So I know a lot about his background. So he teaches kind of the sort of organizational class. I'm teaching kind of the science technology studies version of that class with a little, because I could probably teach that class almost as well as he could, because that's our mutual training. But now I'm kind of going in a critical information studies, critical STF kind of approach. So that I think is very unusual. Although I've gotten good guidance from Carson and Steve on that. But I think it's the way that at least will move that class a little bit is to sort of, like you can see, we talked about information systems versus information infrastructures. We talked about kind of algorithms and kind of critiquing algorithms and those kinds of big things. So
the thing that I'm thinking about for this is the students probably prefer verbal versus writing.
Well,
because you could give them the same prompts in a blog or a discussion board or a journal, whatever.
They certainly have a lot to write in my class, so it's not like they don't.
So it's kind of refreshing not to have to write.
Yeah. So this is also interesting because there are two people in my class who's not. They're not.
Today,
So this is all that
about
this is not the first language in this area.
prediction.
Yeah.
How well we can say that? Sorry. And
I
why?
wanted to say I have definitely had Chinese speakers in the past, but I think there's something, maybe they wouldn't like it as much. Maybe writing is better. I'm not sure I can say one way or the other. I don't think it's short and sweet in that sense.
Well, as a writing professor, what do you think?
Yeah. I would love to and I do give them things that aren't necessarily writing, because and here's the thing, I teach largely the required classes.
Yeah.
I don't have the luxury of having people who actually want to be in my class, right?
I've always thought those too.
Yeah. And so, they hate writing. It terrifies them, they're intimidated by it, they have weird ideas about it from K through 12 that are not at all what they, they're just weird.
You kind of in the business of undoing all that. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I love kind of engaging. I know, right? Like, it was like putting me in a math class, so where I can engage them in other ways, of course it's a writing and rhetoric class, but I think that's where I get away with things too, right? Because rhetorically, right, audience and genre, and so we do a lot of that, like multimodal composing and things of that nature. So I try to work you know, give me a minute and a half of whatever, and then they're not writing. And
I could see, you know, I'm not sure I want to do this, but I could also see the logic of it, like pegging, like this is the sort of 3-minute version of what you just wrote.
Yeah.
Because they all, they have a lot of, like, you know, I'm calling them reflective essays that they're really trying to hone an opinion, right, as opposed to summarizing. They're very, very good at that skill.
Yeah, right.
And I'm not saying that skill's bad, but they're really not so good at understanding kind of almost the I voice, right? And so I think this is a much more natural way of articulating the I voice that I think they need to have as well as the ability to summarize.
Yeah. Our department has a huge emphasis right now on metacognition.
What is that?
So thinking about your thinking.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so we are really emphasizing reflective and metacognitive practices.
Yeah.
So I think this is just one more way to do that. That again, a flow state.
Well, and another way I can see this tool being used, especially in writing, is getting started is the hardest part.
Right?
Where do I begin?
Yeah.
So thinking about it as you're talking about it kind of is a way to warm yourself up to getting into the writing.
And I should have said, so this is something, you know, that you can do in a browser, you can do it in an iPhone and Android app.
Yeah.
You know, so it's pretty, like even getting to that point, of we're doing that more and more.
Right.
Well, I don't do it as much as my students.
Yeah.
You know, like it's a kind of naturalistic engagement as
Yeah.
well. And so I think the low stakes part is actually kind of important.
Yeah. Right.
For me, and maybe it sounds like for you. I don't like. I think that Barbara uses it. I mean, quite legitimately, but in a very different way, right? So I think that perspective needs to be heard as well. But I think there are also other tools where they're kind of presentation platforms, and this is not that for me, right? I almost want to see, like, actually, I have done like online classes, not using this tool, but sometimes they picked up on it. Where I was in the summer once, and I was in a different hotel, like for 3 weeks in a row, and I want to know like where you are, and so some of my students were apply this way, and became part of their thing. It's like, oh, I'm sure, hearing my officer, you know, like, and that kind of like, we want to know who you are holistically to know what your ideas are. And so whatever, I would like to know of my own practice how I've been able to do that, because I want to keep doing that, and I'm not sure all populations work the same way.
Right.
So I think I've also been kind of weird woman in technical environments that has to kind of adopt a persona for a lot of my male students, and I think one with a bit of click stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure that's necessary anymore, right? It was necessary in the context I was in. So maybe some of my practices need to shift a little bit, but I still think it works for what at least I'm trying to achieve. So. Oh, good. That's my job.
One thing that we do here, Care Services, they use interview streams, and we have to use it in our 444 class, presentation course. And the last 2 semesters, both times when my students started hitting it all at the same time, there was such technical difficulty where I could see, and I give them the answers, the questions to answer. What they're doing is they're practicing, tell me about yourself. They're practicing elevator pitches.
I don't like that, yeah.
And what a great way to practice elevator pitches.
To practice it, for sure. Yeah.
So they can just, before they come to class, I can flip it, and their teammates can give them constructive criticism when they come.
Totally. I think the thing
My
for
mind is just 1 mile a minute.
For sure. I think the thing for me is like every now and then someone would read their reply. You know, and I think I need to honor that. It's like, you know, the same thing you're talking about being a little bit anxious about doing it. But I tried to figure out how to undo that behavior, and so
Somebody in front of them with 2 cards.
Yeah, or I think usually they're reading
Well,
it.
did you ever see those YouTube videos where they hold up the cue cards?
Yeah.
One at a time?
Right. This is more that they're just reading what's on their screen and their camera is getting them, so you can kind of see where their eyes are going.
Yeah, right.
Then, for certain things, I think that's brilliant. That's fine. But for what I'm trying to get at, that like almost naturalistic temper kind of works a little bit better. And so I don't quite know what I did about that. That hasn't happened for a while. But that's kind of a little bit informal, low stakes feeling. Like they can tell us a little bit how I grade. I tend to be generous on grading these. You know, I'm not generous in grading writing. because that's my skill set too, right? So they know, but I'll write extensive things. They get a little bit of a pass here, but they have to play, right? But they tend to want to play, right? So that somehow evens out. All right.
Any last minute questions or best practices or thoughts? How do you connect to it?
It's in a browser. It's FlipGrid.com. Let's see if it's free for like this. If I didn't, what would I do if I didn't have a lot? Like create your free account.
Oh.
See what that is. So
wait, go back up, because it says, with FlipGrid, you now have access to a free version that never expires. You're allowed one grid with limited features. Okay, so you could do one class this semester.
Exactly.
Wow.
So
add as many topics and record as many responses.
But limited features, I wonder what all that sharing stuff. I bet all that
new with
stuff.
Limited features, right?
That kind of assessment stuff, because this is kind of what probably the old version.
Right.
Right.
You're
so
probably
the bells
right.
and whistles.
Probably have an hour or a minute and a half kind of thing.
Be here. So anyway,
did it archive all those previous classes?
Well, essentially, if you I'm not going to log in right now, but I just noticed this because I couldn't remember a password. I just kind of figured it out. My account will expire on the 31st of May. So I hope that doesn't happen. Like I can try to figure out how to convince these guys to buy a license or whatever it is, and then adopt me into it. But for the moment, because I've been working a little, our Rutgers was working with them, and that we had an institutional license. And again, I don't think that that's anything outrageously expensive. Like
Not going to happen.
it was.
Ingrid. No.
I think it was like $60 a year for an individual. But I got them to. Anyway, I don't know that I need all those ones now. It's kind of cool. I almost want to do a research project on all that data, which I can't do, but for IRB. But I'm grateful to have that. It shows a little bit of I have pretty amazing students, so I'm glad of that.
We do need to look into that, seriously, because I think it would be a good thing to be able to offer to anyone who would like to use a tool like this.
I'm not sure, it's imperative, but I think that it's really nice.
Well, you're using it, Barb's using it, so we already have 2 full-time instructors.
You would have something she showed me. I don't remember all the details of that, but
Hers is a homegrown.
yeah, exactly. So you might also get her to adopt this if you wanted. Somehow you wanted her to augment that tool, and there was a cost issue or something like that. I guess at the moment I think it has both.
I could read it for 335 as well.
Yeah, sure.
Hers is it's like inside the Blackboard too. So her homegrown tool she built somehow that works inside.
Yeah, she integrated it.
Right. So that it's kind of nice in my opinion to not have them necessarily separated.
Not in Blackboard, she has an embed code.
Yeah. No. Exactly. So anyway. But I'm not. I think that you get the gist of how I use it. So I think for me, I'm not. I kind of like that it comes from people who are in learning tools. So, which is not to say that you in that same space, but I kind of like the origins of this tool, and I like seeing how they've actually listened and grown it. So I'm a little inclined, and because I have a sister that lives in Minnesota, and used to live there myself. I kind of like them secretly, but iPhone, iPad, Android, some of them are like all this kind of stuff, but
Too bad they don't have a pricing option.
You want me to email them?
No.
I think they do. I think they just don't.
I can do that.
Ladies, thank you very much for attending. We very much enjoy having you come to our sessions. Nice to see you again. Yeah, thank you. We do. You're welcome.
I feel like I've seen them before. That might be
You're welcome.
a big part.
I wonder if we should Google it. How much is FlipGrid?
I'm going to stop recording now.
Oh, do you need me to do that? Over here?